Dr. Rana, I was just curious if you could explain the time discrepancy between Adam's Y chromosome and Eve's mitochondrial DNA.
Speak into the mic, too.
Okay.
Could you hear? Do I need to repeat it? Or?
Yeah. The question was, can you explain the time discrepancy? And you know, it's it's interesting that with mitochondrial DNA dating, you typically get consistently a much older date for mitochondrial Eve than you do with Y chromosomal Adam. But what's interesting is they both seem to pinpoint to the same location. Now, some of that difference could very well be methodological in nature. For example, with mitochondrial DNA analysis, the assumption is going in that you have essentially a homogeneous sampling of mitochondrial DNA, and there's good evidence that there's actually something called heteroplasmy and even triplasmy, where you have multiple versions of mitochondrial DNA within an individual. And the number of different versions of mitochondrial DNA actually vary from tissue to tissue. So some of that discrepancy, for example, could just simply be, in a sense, an overestimate of the diversity of mitochondrial DNA because of the heteroplasmy, which may bring the dates much closer. Another possibility, which is intriguing, is that maybe Adam and Eve didn't know each other, that there was a mitochondrial Eve and a Y chromosomal Adam that actually were separated in time, which would not fit very well within our model. Some evolutionary biologists argue that that's actually what's going on. Another possibility that I've seen was based on work by Michael Hammer's group at the University of Arizona, where they actually argued that some of that discrepancy may not be due to time differences, but actually differences in the population size, and estimated that maybe there were 3 times the number of women versus the number of men, and that they actually would have existed at the same time, but the effective population sizes would have been different, about a 3-to-1 difference. Well, what's interesting is that, in a sense, with our model, you really are not going back to the origin of humanity necessarily, but actually to an event in human history that's described, at least in Scripture, as a flood event. And so we would argue that there was a real flood event that shaped human history that was a local flood, but it would have impacted all of humanity. And according to Scripture, there was Noah and his 3 sons and then their wives. Well, Noah and his 3 sons would have 1 Y chromosomal DNA. The wives would have potentially, there could have potentially been 4 different mitochondrial DNA sequences there. And so the question is, could this discrepancy be somehow reflecting a flood event? So we at least throw that out as a possible explanation for why there's that discrepancy.